Comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostic alongside Katie Greifeld. We're counting you down to the closing bell. We're here to help take us beyond the bell. It's a global simulcast with our friends Carol Massar and Tim Stenovic. Welcome to our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms on another volatile day here for equities, commodities, and of course, treasuries alike.
Is it the meta effect? What is going on today? I can't make sense of it. I mean, I'm looking at a meta chart, but it might be true of like almost every equity chart because we've had quite a turnaround from about.
Do you have one of those meta headsets? Those,
No.
What do you call them now?
Oculus Quest.
Oculus.
Do you have one?
Sounds like Tim has one.
I've dabbled. I don't have the 3 yet.
Did you seriously got that so?
I mean, I pay attention
What
to.
do you do on that, Tim? You just play games?
Yeah, you play games. I've messed around with it a little bit. There's some fun games. I did boxing on that. That was a fun little workout.
You
Okay.
could just you
Interesting.
could box in real life.
Yeah.
Oculus Quest.
Yeah.
I think
I
Choppy
didn't
though
realize
is a
you had
good.
that much free time, Tim.
I don't.
Okay.
No, this was my workout. This was my workout. Yeah. But I do think choppy is a good word to describe today's trade. It's been a while since I've looked at a stat like this, but we moved between gains and losses on the S&P 500 at least a dozen times today. So investors kind of thinking, okay, which way are things going to go?
Did you count that?
Yeah, I just did. I counted it on the Bloomberg terminal.
That sounds painful.
SPX, GIP, and then I used my finger to count.
Did you really do that?
Yeah.
That's cool. That's no, that's high finance. And I was saying to Romaine earlier that it does feel choppy.
That's AI at work, right?
In the stock market, no clear direction there. But then you take a look at the bond market, the message is clear. Yields are higher right now.
Yeah, absolutely so. And that appeared to be the big driver. About half the stocks in the S&P are lower. About half the stocks in the S&P are higher. You put it all together, and the net effect is really a market that is unchanged on the day. Of course, it takes time for these numbers to settle, but right now the S&P 500 right around 4,274, which is right around where it was yesterday at the close. Basically unchanged here on the day. The Dow Jones Industrial Average did move a slightly lower here on the day, down by about 0.2%. The NASDAQ Composite higher on the day by 0.2%, while the Russell 2000 is going to finish the day as the relative outperformer higher on the day by about 17 points.
All right, we're going to get into industry groups in just a moment, but I do want to point energy, really the outperformer. This is oil jumps to a one-year high. Has to do with levels at Cushing dropping to the lowest since July of 2022. Again, these supply-demand dynamics at play. But, Katie, I feel like we continue to talk about energy being really an outperformer.
I'm going to do that right now. You take a look at the industry groups. Energy up about 2.5%. We all know the story. Oil prices in particular through the roof. That's benefiting the equities as well. Capital goods also saw a strong day, as too did some of the semis. And of course, we're awaiting Micron results after the bell. You go down the list, there is more red than green. You can see it down at the bottom. Autos not doing too hot today. And utilities, interesting. One of your defensive plays off by about 1.9% today, Carol.
All right, let's.
And I just want to, before we get to your gainers here, I just want to point out in the energy space, Exxon at a record high, closing at a record high today. And remember, I mean, the last time we had that record high, I think, was back in February of this year here. So quite a round trip.
All right, do we want to mention Micron, guys?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Fourth quarter adjusted operating loss, $1.21 billion. That is just a little bit light. Estimated loss was $1.25 billion. Adjusted loss per share, $1.07. Estimated loss was $1.18. We weren't looking for good numbers from Micron. That certainly was, we were getting kind of some guidance from the company.
Yeah, I mean, certainly so. But I think what more people are interested in is where we are in that sort of memory chip cycle. Obviously, any commentary they might have about artificial intelligence and how their chips, if at all, sort of fit into that, given that NVIDIA has sort of sucked the life out of the room when it comes to the chip space here. I haven't actually had a chance to go through this release here, but it'll be interesting to see whether the guidance that they give going forward is going to be enough for investors to sort of placate them that there is a longer-term growth story here.
Well, Sanjay Mehrotra, Micron Technology President and CEO, in that press release remains saying, quote, our 2023 performance positions us well as a market recovery takes shape in 24, driven by increasing demand and disciplined supply. Here's your AI shout out. We look forward to record industry total addressable market revenue in 2025 as AI proliferates from the data center to the edge.
Well, back up here. They're saying industry total addressable. Okay, well, that's good for the industry. I mean, how much of that is going in there?
But they're saying it's going to go from, the data centers, so, those in the cloud and those on premise, as well as to the edge. It's going the whole gamut. It's running the gamut. But you're right. They're not giving any detailed guidance on that.
And I mean, we'll see what comes of the earnings call, but it seems like after hours traders sharing some of Remain's skepticism. You see shares down about 2%.
And I just want to interject
Yeah.
again here, too, because there are other headlines, too. This is regarding the forecast heading into what is now their fiscal first quarter. They're saying gross margins are going to contract by 2 to 6%. The street was looking for actual growth in those gross margins. So I am curious as to where this is coming from, whether there is maybe a spending story here that investors need to parse, or maybe something else is going on under the hood, Carol.
Yeah, and this is why I said, like earlier, they were predicting this fourth quarter that margins were going to be down. Fourth quarter adjusted gross margin was down 9.1%. The estimate was for 10.2%. We were expecting some of that. But as you say, what they have to say about the first quarter and the outlook, certainly some negativity. And you see the stock kind of kicking around. Right now it's down about 1.8% in the after hours. So we'll continue to parse those numbers and see what other additional commentary we get, certainly from the company. All right, let's go flip side. Let's go to some of the gainers, if we may. Paychex among them. This was top of the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100 throughout the day. This company reporting adjusted earnings per share for the first quarter that did beat the average analyst estimate. Stock is a little changed on the year, but you did see it up about 3.4% in today's trade. DNA, Ginkgo Bioworks Holdings. Talk about a wild trade today. Up about 20% at its highs today. Dropping off of that, but still with a gain of about 2.9% by the close. Did hit a 52-week high intraday. News, the company, healthcare firm, of course, collaborating with Pfizer to develop some new RNA drugs, so some enthusiasm in that one. And Levi Strauss, higher up to Cowen, started coverage on the company with an outperform rating. They put a $16 price target on it. The stock closing at $13.20 a share. Stock's down about 16% year to date, 10% of the float shorted, but nonetheless, investors liking that call.
Yeah.
Tim setting it up about 2%.
I'm going to add another one to your list. This
Sure.
is for Katie. Ferguson PLC, which we were talking about a little earlier, which we all just learned about here from Heather Brilliant over at Diamond Hill. 52-week high, Katie Greifeld.
No kidding. That's not the Polish grocery store, right? That's
No. This is the HVAC supplier that's actually based overseas in London, but as she told me, they're still a U.S. company. So I don't know how that
valuations. You
works.
got to
It's up
screen for the
29%.
discounts.
No, we had this great guest on, and she had these stock picks, and they were all foreign companies, and then she said, well, actually, they're not all
We
foreign.
learned a lot.
But
Well, that's what's great about this job. You get to learn
I
every
love
single
being
day.
corrected on
Talk about bringing the discussion to a halt, guys.
All right, Carol did the gainers. I'm going to do some of the decliners. I wanted to point out shares of Meta Platforms. They were all over the place today. This after executives, including Mark Zuckerberg, spoke at the company's Connect Developer Conference. Stock dropped as much as 4% earlier in the session, ended up moving as high as half a percentage point, fell 0.4% at the end of the day. The company introducing some AI features to its apps. It's going to give the company's users all over the world the ability to chat with people and machines, kind of like what you have with ChatGPT and OpenAI. Some celebrities, including Paris Hilton, Tom Brady, Snoop Dogg in there as well.
Wait, you chat with them directly, or are you chatting
it's
like what?
Yeah, they're kind of like avatars of them.
Oh, so,
And they're
Tom
playing-
Brady just gives his voice and they create.
For
And I
sure.
can
But
ask-
his voice in his face too.
Okay.
And he
Oh,
becomes
his
like a
face.
sports
Now
expert.
you sold me.
Yeah.
Now you're
He's
talking.
pretty busy in retirement, I have to say, isn't he?
Well, he's getting his bag. He's like, isn't he like, what is he now? He's like a Delta pilot? Is that something?
Yeah,
He's
Delta
in the back.
pilot, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
think he's a team member at Delta, I think is the proper term.
He's
yeah.
the metaverse, actually.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to continue with the other decliners. NextEra Energy Inc., I should say, the worst performer in the S&P 500 on a percentage basis today, down 8.2%. Shares fell after the company struck an agreement to sell its Florida city gas utility to Chesapeake Utilities Corp. Shares also taking a hit after NextEra Energy Partners LP, which owns, operates, and acquires wind and solar, reduced its growth rate expectations for limited partner distributions. The company also cutting its full-year run rate adjusted EBITDA forecast, which hit NextEra Energy Inc. as well. And then taking a look at pot stocks today, Aurora Cannabis down 5%. Pot stocks also all over the place today. I wanted to take a look at them because the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee advancing their Safer Banking Act, which would allow banks and credit unions. So you're laughing because they've been doing this for years?
Yeah, they've been doing this for years.
Well, wait till
I think what gets passed first? A budget for next year or this bill?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Hopefully
I think it's
I
all.
don't know.
It's one thing for the Senate to be able to do this, but this passing the House is an entirely different story.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to talk about real quickly about yields here because we did see, once again, real meaningful volatility in the Treasury space. The net effect of it was yields higher once again on the short end of the curve, not by much, just about a basis point here, but the belly of the curve saw most of the action, about 8 basis points higher on the 5-year, 7 on the 10-year here, and even on the long end of the curve, we're higher by 4. And that brings me to a question that I want to pose to you guys here because there's an interesting note out by Bank of America that are kind of looking at the trajectory of yields. We talked so much about what Jamie Dimon had to say in that Times of India interview, that 7% wasn't necessarily out of the realm of possibility. They're kind of given a scenario for getting to 5% and staying at 5% and what it would take. But I thought it was interesting. They talked a lot about the term premium and a lot about the fact that some of the moves that we're seeing, particularly on the long end of the curve, to them seem to suggest more, I guess, optimism about economic conditions longer term.
Well, that's the question we've been asking for months now. What is actually driving it? Is it economic optimism? Maybe that recession getting priced out of the bond market? Or are we adjusting to a new regime here? A higher inflation rate, a higher neutral rate? Is that what's going on at the long end of the curve? Or have we moved beyond that? Is this technicals? Is this people getting flushed out? I don't know. I'd love to know, though.
Does Carol know?
Carol, help.
I'm ghosting you all right now.
Wow.
No, but
Another
it's
ghost
interesting.
there.
Our conversation with Peter Atwater, where he was like, what are we missing that's maybe on the negative side of things and more concerns? And, there's so much, it seems like optimism, even when just the things that come at us, even if you look at the VIX, right? It hasn't spiked up high over some of the worries about a higher rate environment. And even though we've seen rates move up, it seems like there's still a fair amount of optimism out there. So are we missing something? And I don't know. So in other words, I don't know.
That's a great way to end it.
On that note,
We're here with the
Nice
answers.
I
definitive.
guess I should have just
I don't
ghosted
know.
you guys.
I don't know.
I don't know. Go. It's a new function. All right. I'm going to run. I'm going to hide. That'll do it for our cross-platform radio, TV, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals. I guess time will tell us kind of how it all plays out. Join us again tomorrow for our cross-platform coverage. We'll see you then.